Girls, I greet you at this hour. Here is another moment for us to have our clothing and textiles lesson. We will be discussing how to draft a basic sloper. This basic sloper, you discover that it involves your front and back bodies, and it goes down to your hip line. That is the front and back sloper. So first of all, what is this sloper? A sloper, as I said, it includes your bodies to your hips. You remember, when you are talking, the body stops 2 centimeters above your navel. That is your bodies. But once it extends to the hip, it is known as a sloper because it gives you the shape of your it gives you the shape of your blouse. That is what I want you to note. So here we will look at the materials that are needed for this drafting of basic sloper and the basic sloper and the sleeve pattern. The materials needed are your front bodies block. You remember we discussed the 5 basic bodies last week, and I gave you an assignment on it. Some of you submitted, some didn't submit. I'm still expecting that you will all submit. I'll be happy, I will be glad if you do that. So we have already discussed the 5 basic blocks, and therefore we are talking about the basic sloper now, that we set from your bodies down to the hip lines only. And therefore the materials needed are the front bodies block. It means you already having your front and back bodies block ready. So the materials are the front bodies block, the back bodies block, the sleeve block, the pencil, measuring tape, long ruler, you remember our meter stick, calico or cheap materials. You remember our material, the check material or wrappers that we use, the junior wrappers that we used to do. They are in form. Some, if you like, you can go for cheap materials until you produce what you feel it is fitting well. Then you can transfer it to your basic materials. That is what is being done. But in the place of this thing, you can still use your, we said brown paper is one of it. Paper scissors is one of the materials needed. So from here, we'll be talking about the method of tracing out of developing this basic sloper. Number 1 is to trace out the front bodies block. Secondly, you add seam allowances, you remember, of 1.5 cm or 5/8 inch of an inch, you remember, round the these bodies that you have. Number 3, mark in notch positions with inverted V. We said notches are cut upwards, outwards. You remember, notches are cut outwards. They are marked, they are fitting point, they are meeting point. You should remember that. So number 4, make other pattern marks as shown in your textbook. When you go back to your, referring you back to your clothing and textile or pattern drafting textbook, if you have. If you don't have, look at the drawings at your exercise books and then you follow. Number 5, trace out short sleeve pattern and add seam allowance of either 1.5 cm or 5/8 of an inch as we used to do. Mark other patterns, mark other patterns marks like notches or grain lines. Then the next one is cut out those pattern pieces from calico or from that fabric by placing them as at the right position. Then you discover that as you go one by one, then you tack pattern pieces together and fit in. When you just tack round and try to fit it into yourself and see whether the thing is fitting you or not. If there's any adjustment, the next thing, number 10, is that you adjust the seam and the dash position if necessary, if there's any need for adjustment. Then number 11, adjust folds and creases if necessary. If you have not actually iron the material, there may be creases here and there. Then number 12, loosen out pattern pieces and iron out. When you fit it in and there's no correction, you loosen it and iron it out. Then Next stage is that we trace out this truth pattern and correct pattern, which is now you are sure is correct, without from the block. And then the last one is to trace out the pattern on a cardboard sheet. But our own, we use brown papers. You remember, we didn't use cardboard sheet, but we used brown paper. Then from there, we'll be talking about development of this hip sloper. What is this hip sloper? I said basic sloper. It begins from your balls, from your bodies down to your hip line or to the hip measurement. So how do we develop this hip sloper? We will talk about the development of the hip sloper front. Materials are still front bodies pattern, back bodies pattern, brown paper, pencil, measuring tape, long ruler or meter stick, paper scissors. You know, we have paper scissors and fabric scissors. We don't use the two of them on the same thing. So now what we'll do is that for us to trace out, to trace through this front bodies block without seam allowance, you can see the steps are here, step by step, if you follow it. So how do we develop this hip sloper back? You follow almost the same thing using the front bodies and the back. This time around, you use the back bodies to be able to follow the same thing in the front, and you'll be able to get to that. So that is what you do. And once you discover that you have finished, the last thing is just to fit it into your tack. To go, since you have fitted in already, and then you go back to start. You transfer them into your fabrics and start sewing, or you go and do some pattern adaptations as we did in our practicals and begin to sew out finally. That is what I want us to learn. We'll stop here. Next time, if Christ tarries, we'll go back to drafting of the basic skirt. I'm sure you will be so happy and so glad. You just remember, you you picture it in your mind. You go back to your notebooks with all the pictures. I'm sure as I'm doing it, you will follow me immediately. As I'm stopping, by the time that I will be stopping this discussion next week, by this time, you discover that you will go with me, along with me, and once I finish, you will go to draft, even using your head knowledge. I know you will do it because you really did well in your practicals. God bless you. Thank you. So I think the last is to find out what a basic sloper. Go to your dictionary, go to your textbooks. Clothing textbook is a term in clothing and textiles. So find out what a basic sloper is, or a sloper. Then you can submit your assignment through this same medium, and I will go through and I will mark. And if there's any correction, we will do it together. Thank you. God bless you.